a lot of guys who aren't as fortunate as you, and that $3,500 you're making, I know a lot of men who aren't even getting half that amount.
I know. Yeah.
And I just think it's really, really.
It was how many days you had in the big leagues? Like you say, the max was $10,000. And there's a lot of guys that almost had 4 years in, and there were some of them didn't want it. I mean, it offended them, when they come through. And there's some of them guys that didn't want it, but that's...
Well, I got to tell you something, Jim. If any of those men want to turn down that payday, I'm not aware of it. And believe me, Mark and I and Eric will be more than happy if they want to designate those checks and sign them over to us, because we've worked a lot on behalf of the 380 players.
Yes.
Well, you know what? Let's take a little pivot over here, and since we're kind of embarrassing Jim a little bit because he is a stand-up guy, and he's not going to talk about that stuff. And I guess we're definitely going to talk about it because that's one of our themes. But we have a caller right now, actually somebody with us on Facebook Live, and I'm going to bring them on camera because he wants to ask a question, and I want to see if I can get this right. So let me see. I'm going to bring Donnie Brusca, who's one of our callers. We're going to bring him on camera. And Donnie wants to ask a question. I'm wondering if that's working. If it isn't, then I will ask the question for him, which I think I'm going to do right now anyway. So Donnie says, Jim, how was Japanese baseball back then? I guess it was in the early 70s.
Yes.
Don, you on?
Do what?
Hello. Ask your question, Donnie.
Okay, I wanted to ask Jim. I know he played after the majors. He played a couple of seasons in Japan. And I was wondering what it was like back then in Japan playing Japanese baseball.
What was it kind of like? What was the question?
Yeah, Donnie wants to know exactly what it was kind of like when you played Japanese baseball in the mid 70s and early 70s.
I'll tell you what, you play over there, you work your butt off. When I went to spring training, the second year, the first year I had a good year. And when spring training, I was in a slump the time I got out of spring training for 2 months. And they really practice hard and long hours and everything. And it's good baseball. It's good baseball, good fundamentals. They got small ballparks. I hit 9 home runs in 2 months at one time, so they got to be small, And, but they love the game, and it's the pitching. They had very few pitchers that, hell, they found out that they didn't have to throw me a strike to get me out. I was a free swinger, and. But it was good baseball. It's not quite our quality. I thought back in them days it was about the same as our AA, And that guy should have played over a long time. And if I'd have played my cards right, I'd have played a lot longer. But it was all me. The reason I didn't stay any longer.
Excellent. So,
is there anyone else who wants to ask a question there, Mark?
Yeah, I think we do. It looks like we have Mike Menino, who was with us last night in our test drive. And Mike, I'm going to try to bring Mike on camera because Mike wants to ask a quick question. So he's here. Let's see if he can jump on over here. And Mike, are you there? Looks like Mike's outdoors.
Yeah, I just got home from my son's. I'm taking my son's equipment out of the car. And I remembered that you guys had your show today.
Cool. Well, we're glad to have you. You have a question for Mr. Jimmy Qualls.
Hey, Jim, how are you? This is Mike from Staten Island.
Yeah, fine, Mike. How are you?
Okay, good. Hey, listen, sorry if someone already asked you this question, but first of all, congratulations. Even though you had a short career, it was something that most people don't get to do every day. So I congratulate you, and I'm one of those guys. And congratulations on your hit. over Tom Seaver, because I know it pisses a lot of Met fans off, but it's definitely something someone with a short career could always say, hey, listen, I broke up his perfect game.
I never bring any of that stuff up.
Well, we do it for you.
That's our role, to do it for you, Jim.
Yes.
So, Mike, hit Jimmy with a question.
Okay. The question I wanted to ask you, Jim, was are you very involved in how Little League is being run today, as far as like travel teams and just regular, like, guys just playing regular Little League?
Yes, Jim, I think what Mike wants to know is, like, do you follow any of that stuff? Do you give any advice to Little Leaguers or even parents or coaches?
No, I'm not around it too much. We got some nephews and playing a little bit here and there. I don't get involved in it very much, which I probably should. But boy, this Little League anymore, the way it is, I mean, in a town the size of Quincy, Illinois, and then we got these smaller towns out here, and they got to take off and travel so far, and I just can't buy that stuff anymore.
You literally live in the proverbial one traffic light town, don't you?
Do what?
Don't you literally live in the proverbial, Thuder, Illinois is the proverbial one traffic light town?
There's a stop sign right in the middle of it, and about 10 people. There's a four-way stop, and I live about 2 miles out in the country, and I don't have a neighbor for a mile on each side of me, which I like. My animals run free, and I don't have to pin them up and things like that. And it's just pretty quiet out here. But there's some other little towns that's got 10, 1,500 or. Pardon?
Jim, we got another question from Andy from Staten Island. That's a theme here, by the way. People from Staten Island who are asking questions, and he wanted to know what was the difference playing for the Cubs and playing for the crosstown rival White Sox. Did you find there was a difference in the fans, a difference in the ballparks and the clubs and stuff like that? How would you measure those two up?
No, it was, both sides. The only thing I liked best about the White Sox was the manager, and which Chuck Tanner was one of the best managers I ever had. And the organization, Roland Heeman and all them, the organization was great, And but I was one of them expendables, when they needed a power hitter or this or that, and that's when they sent me down to the minor leagues and brought up a power hitter. And but Wrigley Field, it was a good ballpark to play in. I mean, the difference in fly balls, you had to make some adjustment, trying to find the ball half the time. But I thought the old Comiskey was, it was a good ballpark, and I love the management over with the White Sox and with John Holland and people with the Cubs. They was good too.
Now, how would you compare and contrast the late Chuck Tanner with the late Leo DeRocha? Because a lot of people kind of give Leo a bum rap on the 69 season and say that he overplayed his regulars, never rested people. What's your thought on that?
Well, my thought on that, you take Sano and Beckert, and they did not want to be rested. They wanted to play every day. I mean, he didn't say, hey, set her down. I mean, and they run out of gas. They did, and but DeRocher, he had a team there he didn't have to manage. Just look at Banks and Williams and all them old timers and everything. But as the young guys, he could not manage.
Now, I heard that he had trouble with Adolfo Phillips, and was that true because he just couldn't manage him because he was a young guy and he didn't relate to him?
Adolfo left early, and went to Montreal, and I don't know what the deal is with him and Adolfo, but that was one of the fastest guys in the game, and he had a little trouble making contact. That was part of his trouble, was making contact, but I really don't know what the problem with him. With Adolfo, the same way with Kenny Holtzman. I don't know what the problem was with him. He went on out to Oakland and won a couple, 2-3 years there, 20 games.
Yeah.
And, I don't know what his deal, but the rest of the guys, you take like Sano and Becker and Kassinger and Banks and Huntley, he wouldn't blow off at them, but he would on the young boys.
Well, I do want to say this, that one of the other individuals I mentioned earlier, that Bobby Files, one of the guys without a pension, and the man you replaced in the outfield that night, Don Young. But Darcy Fast. Now, Darcy Fast had a higher calling. He was up in 68, and he was counted on to be maybe the fifth starter, to be on the back end of the Cubs rotation in 1969. And I know that if you had a credible starter, a fifth man, you wouldn't have had, to get Hand and Fergie, throw them out, every 4 or 5 days. You could have rested them, like you said. But Darcy Fast had a higher calling. He went to Nam, and after he served this country proudly, he came back, decided, baseball's not for me, and he retired 2 years ago as the chief pastor of the Centralia Community Church in Centralia, Washington. So I don't know if you ever have any Cub reunions. I know you said you've spoken to Fergie a bit. You ever stay in touch with anyone else from that team?
No, Fergie was in town here it's been about a year ago, and I knew he was coming. I went down and visited with him, and it's been maybe 2 or 3 years ago. We had a deal to go up and sign autographs and everything, and that's before Hickman died, which he was one of my best friends, Jim Hickman, and Billy was there, and some of the guys. But Kenny Rudolph, of course, Jay Johnstone was there, but he wasn't part of our group, in '69, but he was there. And but we haven't had one for a while to where the guys are still alive, and Ronnie's gone, and Abernathy, and, and all them guys. And
I always liked Fergie because he was a tough competitor. I also like him because if you go to the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies, all the monies that Fergie makes from signing his autograph goes to the developmentally disabled camp in Northern Illinois that he runs for the disadvantaged kids. So I have a lot of respect for Fergie because of that.
Well, yes. See, he's old enough. Now, you said 220,000. You don't get no more after 10 years.
That's correct.
And that's the top. It was 195. Of course, now it's probably more than that by now. And he makes a good wage there. And plus his, some of his, he gets stuff from autographs and all that stuff and everything. And he's a very gracious person.
Yep. And so are you for appearing with us. Is there anyone else, Mark, who might have a call for Jim? Because he's been so kind. We only thought he would be on with us for 20 minutes, and he's done double duty, more than that already. Is there anyone else who may have a comment or a question for our guest tonight?
We don't have any additional questions, but I would just like to throw a comment out before I kick it over to you. Jim, I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight on our maiden voyage, our first show. And of course, we've got kinks we're always going to have